They said, don't fall, don't forget all the things you've been taught, you've been told. Don't blink, don't run, don't turn left or turn right or look straight at the sun. My mind's going in circles, I'm trying to fight it, getting these voices inside to stay quiet.
As soon as I started talking to Legendary about the potential of making this film, I went back and I rewatched every single Godzilla movie in order from start to finish, which was definitely something I'd never done before. And I did the same thing with all the King Kong films. And it was really interesting because watching the original Godzilla films, it was almost like re-experiencing my childhood to a certain degree, because a lot of them I hadn't seen since maybe I was in like second grade, especially the early Showa era ones. And so the process was just really unique in the sense that, you know, I was able to reinvigorate myself as a filmmaker and as a person, you know, in a way where I was able to kind of almost trace back the origins of what made me excited about movies in general. I remember as a kid having arguments literally on the playground with my friends about who would win in a fight of King Kong versus Godzilla. And even though there was, you know, the 1960s film, which already existed, it didn't quite satiate that, you know, that answer. You know, like it's very open-ended who won that fight. And so the debate kind of raged between friends of mine, and you know, and I don't want to say necessarily what my perspective was at the time, because I think it'll give away this film, because really my answer to that question, who would win in a fight, Godzilla versus King Kong, really hasn't changed since about first grade, I think. And so that was what was exciting about doing this film, was that I was able to put my stamp on that question, the big question of who would win in that fight. And that, more than anything, was the reason why I wanted to make this movie. Well, I think you can look at the film as two separate stories that intersect eventually. And one is sort of Team Kong and Team Godzilla, and each one's kind of following, you know, each human story is following the monster story as well. So you have Millie Bobby Brown, who's kind of spearheading one end of the journey, and she's obsessed with Godzilla, and you know, she's convinced that Godzilla is misunderstood. You know, the world thinks that Godzilla's turned his back on everyone and that he's destroying things recklessly, he's a villain, but she thinks that there's something else going on. And so her end of the journey is, you know, trying to prove that Godzilla's, you know, not this evil force. On the other end of the journey, we have Alexander Skarsgård sort of spearheading a mission with Kong, where Kong has essentially been you know, Kong has been being used as sort of a bodyguard. This is a battle that hasn't been waged since 1962. So, you know, for us, it's like, it's got to be the definitive version and the most satisfying version of these monsters coming together. And so, you know, in doing that, you know, knowing that, you know, everybody's got their favorite, and you have to satisfy both of those, and they're both powerful monsters with their own specialties and weaknesses, and so that's all taken into consideration. And so, you know, for us, it was just important that this is just the most epic battle of all time. Kyle Chandler, you know, he's been, you know, it's great whenever you're bringing people back onto something, you know, like in a sequel fashion, because they have sort of a shorthand and an understanding of what they're getting into. And you know, and I think Kyle has this, you know, great reputation of being sort of America's dad, and he plays that so well. And his relationship with Millie, behind the scenes and on camera, is it's exactly what you'd want that sort of father-daughter relationship dynamic to be, and it's so quintessential to this type of film. You know? The cast has just been unbelievable. I mean, from, everybody from Alexander to Kaylee, who's a newcomer. She's a deaf actress, and she's 10 years old, I think, and she's probably the most professional actor I've ever worked with in a weird way. It's really bizarre. This is her first movie, but she seems to know more than anybody here, which is a huge relief. Anytime you're working with kids, it's, there's always this kind of, trial and error period, but with her, we never had any of that. It's a very physically demanding film for a lot of these actors. So somebody like Alex is really amazing because he's able to do all the physical stuff. And what I like about him is that he knows that this film needs sort of an action star, but neither one of us wanted to do sort of the stoic, kind of like straight man, boring action guy. We wanted a guy who had a lot of flaws and is kind of nerdy in a lot of ways. He's not your normal action hero, and Alex really, he pushed that into the character from the get-go, which was really great because it really needed that extra push, and he wanted it to have a little bit of an 80s homage. So if you look at his costume, we gave him these crazy Back to the Future, sneakers and that type of thing, so that it subtly kind of echoes back to the 80s without being ridiculously on the nose about it. I've been a really big fan of Rebecca Hall for years, like especially with her movie Christine that she starred in. And so, like I was absolutely thrilled. It was one of those things where when you're casting a movie, there's always sort of a best case scenario, and you rarely get that, weirdly, she was my best case scenario, and I was actually shocked that, she was so on board with doing it. But she brings a lot of depth to the character and, has a great relationship with Kaylee. If you see them ever behind the scenes, I mean, she can communicate with sign language with her just as well as her interpreter. I mean, most of the time when we're rolling, you have to communicate. Usually you just call it out, action, cut, blah, 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 but when somebody's deaf, obviously that goes out the window. And so if you look at like any of like the takes behind the scenes, it's like Rebecca's always the one, kind of letting Kaylee know. She's giving her cues. She's kind of, squeezing her on the shoulder when she needs to know that there's a cue for things. And so she's really gone above and beyond for that type of thing as well. Lance Reddick is somebody who, I've worked with on The Guest, and I was really excited to bring him back in on this film. We had a great experience on that movie, and he plays sort of one of the heads of Monarch, and that's a role that we haven't seen in this world. And so I wanted somebody who had this very kind of untouchable stature to him, and and a gravitas, and immediately Lance was an obvious choice that came to mind. I mean, I think that the movie in itself is it's so many different things all in one kind of cohesive package. It's a futuristic sci-fi fantasy film with the biggest fight scenes of all time. It's got a little bit of everything to be excited about. It's hard to kind of like narrow it down. It's not as simple as just saying like, I think this person or this monster should win versus this one for this reason or whatever, and taking out my biases of who I thought should win going into it. At the end of the day, we had to kind of set that aside and say, okay, let's look at these two monsters objectively with all the skills that they have individually, and what actually happens when you put them together and they fight. What does that actually look like? And who would actually win? And at the end of the day, it's really the most important thing, even beyond who was the winner, to me going into it, is that there absolutely had to be a winner. This is not another movie that you can, a versus movie, where you should walk away still asking the question, who won? This has to be the definitive answer to the question, who wins, Godzilla or Kong? And so, my biases aside, I honestly can't say that I like one more than the other, because I love them both the same in completely different ways.
It's a really exciting, nerve-wracking, but incredibly gratifying thing for us at Legendary to be bringing both Godzilla and Kong together finally, after trying to bring back Godzilla the way we have, and Kong in this new universe that we've started to build for them. To see them come together and clash is an incredibly exciting thing. Adam has a really distinctive, dynamic style. Visually, the movie has a really robust, incredible color palette. He's really pushed some of the story elements to new and exciting places. And as a world builder, what he's done with Hollow Earth, which is an entirely new element that we haven't used in this franchise before, or we haven't introduced in this franchise before, it's a really fun thing to watch him bring his style into the MonsterVerse. So Godzilla vs. Kong is the first time Kong in the MonsterVerse timeline leaves Skull Island. And when he does so, he upsets that natural balance that Godzilla is the primary force within. So, and in the movie, you'll see that there's an exploration of the history of both of these creatures deep in the deep primordial past. But in current day, when Kong leaves the island, they are fated to collide. Godzilla is not going to let another force that could challenge him exist without a fight. What's really fun about this movie, and something we're really excited about with what Adam's brought to it, is apart from his dynamic visual style and what he wants to do with music and sound and some of the great actors and the performances that he's working on the actors with, he's really opened up the world. So we have an incredible sequence in the Hollow Earth where we explore an entirely new terrain that we haven't seen in the MonsterVerse franchise before. And we, of course, have a massive face-off at the end of the movie, not only between Godzilla and Kong himself, but it's been really important to us in these films to bring in great actors who can portray these characters at the center of the films. And in Godzilla vs. Kong, we continue with Madison Russell, who's played by Millie Bobby Brown, and Mark Russell, played by Kyle Chandler, and see how their lives have changed since King of the Monsters, and as they're faced with this new threat at the core of Godzilla vs. Kong. We also have a fun dynamic come together with this kind of strange trio that ends up going on an adventure in the middle of the movie with Millie Bobby Brown, a young actor named Julian Dennison, who plays Josh, who's a very good friend of Madison's, and an employee of the shadowy corporation known as Apex, played by Tyree Henry, a character named Bernie. And they go on this adventure together to try to figure out what Apex is doing. As the most anthropomorphic of the creatures, and the one who spent the most time living amongst people, as he did on Skull Island with the iwi, Kong, we discover that Kong has a very special relationship with Gia, and begins to form one with Dr. Eileen Andrews, played by Rebecca Hall, and with Nathan Lynn, played by Alexander Skarsgård. We're really excited to bring back the Godzilla that we love and that fans love, and the Kong that we love and that the fans have loved, to have those characters all collide, but in and amongst a human story that has real emotion and heart, and with phenomenal actors, that takes us to places we haven't seen before, especially the Hollow Earth, which should be an incredible thing. I wouldn't want to call that fight, but I think force on force, Godzilla probably has the upper hand, but Kong has a few tricks up his sleeve, so it's not that simple.
I met Adam 5-6 years ago a couple of times for another project that never got made, and I just really liked him. We had some great conversations, and I thought he was very interesting. He's a cinephile. He knows everything about cinema, and I was really impressed by his body of work. So I was very excited when Legendary and Warner Brothers told me that Adam was going to do this. I think it's more layered and more nuanced than the good humans versus the evil giants or the evil titans. They're animals. They're not good nor bad. They do what animals do, you know? And I think that's also what the reason they go after each other, King Kong and Godzilla, is because they're both alpha. They're both apex predators, and there can only be one alpha. I was itching to do more of an action adventure movie. I was really excited about doing tonally something different from what I've been doing in the past 2-3 years. And that's always fun when you get to do something that you feel like you haven't done in a while. And there's a lot of that in this. And it's been a lot of fun finding Nathan, and it's almost like an homage to the movies I grew up with, like Indiana Jones or Romancing the Stone, or obviously Lethal Weapon, which is a movie we refer to a lot, or my character, it's his favorite movie. And so it's that, Die Hard, those types of movies. It's been a lot of fun kind of playing with that. When we first meet Nathan, he's on Skull Island working on this mission. He works for Monarch as the chief cartographer and a geologist. So he's basically planning the path into Hollow Earth. So that's where we find him, and the climate is very destabilized, especially around Skull Island. But again, that's the plan, to kind of dig this tunnel and then send a mission down to plant the Orca Z down there. But it goes awry, and they lose their pilots, the whole crew, and one of them being Nathan's love, his girlfriend, that he just proposed to, and she goes missing. He assumes that they're all dead. And Nathan goes into a very dark place. He's given up all hope. They hear a big explosion, so he assumes that they're all dead. And when we find Nathan, he's drunk, very despondent, and given up on everything, and does not like the idea of trying to go back down there, because he's saying that it's too dangerous. We've already lost our crew. I'm not going to put more people in jeopardy. I've always liked Godzilla, but 100% Team Kong. I mean, he's Nathan's guy.
I play Bernie Hayes, who I hold very near and dear to my heart because he is an ex-Apex engineer. He has suffered a bit of loss. You know, he lost his wife unexpectedly, who was also an engineer at Apex. And, you know, he has, by being on the inside of this industry, he started to realize all the kind of, you know, wheelings and dealings that go on with Apex. It's not just so much about what they produce, but what they hide as well from the average human being. So he's started to create his own conspiracy theories about what's going on in the world. I mean, like he's very much a person who doesn't take things at face value. And I think he's a champion for mankind. You know, there's something, his heart is so big. He's so lovable, but at the same time, everyone looks at him as a crackpot. You know, everyone thinks that he's a little bit kooky. Everybody thinks that he's a little bit not right. You know, that cousin you have in your family, like, he can't get right. So that's like kind of like what people like kind of think about Bernie a little bit. But honestly, he never moves through life without his intentions being the purest. You know, he really wants to be the champion and not so much the savior, but he really wants to do what's right. This is like the heavyweight champion of the world fight going on right now. Like, you know, like, I guess, would I be considered Godzilla's Don King right now? Because I'm like, I guess I would be. Because I really do care about Godzilla, honestly. It's crazy because you don't really want to pick a side, but you kind of got to pick a side because at the end of the day, all of mankind is at stake. And but it's unlike anything in the world, being able to run around and just like, you know, try to, you know, really be that champion for Godzilla, because it's like, you know, you know that this fight is the fight of all fights, and it's yeah, you just want to be on the right side of it, you know. Millie is like, I mean, she's like, I don't know, she's been so awesome to work with. The two of them have actually brought out the wacky side of me, you know what I mean? Like, because we have fun, you know, we're having fun, and I don't know. There's something about their essence and the way that they carry themselves out in character and out of character, which is so great. Julian is honestly just I don't know, just just a big ball of happiness, you know, and just always like he can literally make me laugh in a way that I'm just like, why am I? These teenagers, like what? But we have fun, you know what I mean? We have fun, and we really care about each other, honestly, on set and off, and you know, I have not seen any of the Millie pranks just yet. I hope I never do. I hope that I'm at least in on it. I hope I'm on the right side of the prank. You know what I mean? Like I hope that I'm the one that's like. And plus, I could probably teach him a few things because I love pranking. It's my blood. Bernie is a pretty much get up and go kind of guy. Like he really needs to be prepared at all times. Like I think he has like MREs, meals ready to eat. You know, I think he's waiting for the apocalypse to happen. I think that he knows that something's gonna go down. So, you know, I'm usually like I'm a scientist as well, so I'm constantly making different gadgets to survive from. Like, you know, I have a special screwdriver that I've created. You know, I'm trying to make all different kinds of gadgets to make sure that I, you know, survive anything that Apex puts on. And I think that, you know, with my watch, I think it's a keepsake as well of things that I've lost in my life. I think it serves as a reminder of where to be. And he's also into magnets because he believes that magnets can actually like really change the ions and carbon in our body to keep us healthier. So he like, you know, he experiments with magnets. I think his diets change all the time for survival. I don't know, he seems like a guy who's like growing his own aloe vera in the back, you know, so he can like have his own personal like lotions and stuff like that. He's a pretty like rustic guy, but he's incredibly smart. Like people would think of him as a crackpot, but he's not.
Adam's incredible. I mean, I was already such a huge fan of Adam with his prior films, and he's just been out of the box with his ideas. The writing of this script, it's beautifully written. I mean, the way that it's intertwined, two absolutely strong creatures with a humanized background story, and the way that they connect, this sort of idea of idolizing and at the same time the future with the mechanical side of it all, and then at the same time personal stories intertwined. It's unlike anything you've ever read before, and the way that Adam is approaching it is quite special because he's worried about the humane side of it. I think that the experience and his incredible knowledge of film, because he's so well educated and he's such a geek and in a good sense, a nerd, and he's so informed that he's finally being given the chance with this film to kind of broadcast what he's got, and he's done such an incredible job. Well, I think that the people that are watching the next Godzilla film are going to be really excited to explore a bit more about that whole Millie side of the story and Godzilla, and you get to really know her a bit more and where she's coming from and the post her mom story and all that, and it's really beautiful. I think that at the end of the day, this movie shows family values, human interaction in scrutinizing circumstances. It really puts our morality at test. In this story, you see every character being slightly compromised and having to make decisions. And even though it's based on Godzilla and Kong, you feel for the character. You feel so much. You care in this film. She's behind Apex, and she works directly with one of the characters who was played by Damien Vichier. And throughout the film, we discover her real intentions, truly. And I think that what I loved about this character, first and foremost, it was cool to see a woman behind a company on this level, and obviously being a Latina woman, it's hard to find roles that are not stereotypical or pin you into a stereotype, and it was really empowering to see that someone with such energy and such presence and such force was this woman that kind of was running this complete company within on the boat with the character of Nathan and Dr. Andrews. And so I found it fascinating, and I think that it's basically when you get caught up in a situation where it's humanity versus our personal agenda, that what would you choose? And I think that it's in those moments that we really discover people's personalities. See, Godzilla is, he's a misunderstood guy, I feel like. But I don't know, I gotta root for Kong. I gotta give it to Kong. I love his strength in this film is very, very beautiful, and the strength that Gia gives Kong to me is really, really special. But again, Millie's character gives Godzilla its own punch, so we shall see. We shall see the movie to know.
Kind of a treat to be here to get to hang around with not just Godzilla this time, but also King Kong. And these films are, it's really something different for an actor when they do these big films. And you've got these incredible sets and all these talents that come together to build these incredible things. And the people that are involved, I mean, they're the best in the business working these things. And so, you learn quite a lot. It's incredible what these guys do. It's immense. It's on a scale beyond. You've got to think of a football stadium filled with pretend debris and buildings on their edges and this and that. And then you've got the other guys putting all the smoke underneath it. And then you've just got hundreds and hundreds of people running around running all this stuff. And, it's not lost on me as the actor. You're just a tiny little piece of this cog. And, but they create this world you can really lose yourself in, and they do such a great job. You can, you really believe that they're there. So when you see Godzilla, you see King Kong, it all comes together. The role in this film gives him a lot more. I think the transition in between the 3 years that have gone in between probably indicate that he'd like a little more control over what's going on with this world, and that he has more to offer. And he's trying to take more control. Therefore, he is the Monarch Deputy Director of Special Projects now. He's far more involved with the defense of the Earth from these Titans. And that is his role. In the interim of the 3 years, obviously she's grown a little bit older. She's a teenager now, and latter year teenager, let's say. And I'm off trying to figure out what's going on and trying to protect the globe from the Titans. And I think my job keeps me pretty busy, and I'm probably not the best father when it comes to the time I spend away, but my intentions, if they could be exercised, would be recognized as all goodwill, no doubt. Monarch's trying to come up with the plan. This film sort of starts with, like I say, after 3 years of since the last encounter with the Titans, and Godzilla is on the rampage again when we start out here, and why we don't know. That's our job to figure out why. And of course, you've got Monarch trying to do that, and then you've got Apex at the same time. They're at the time rebuilding all these cities that have been destroyed, and the two of them come together, and now we're trying to figure out what's happening, and we're trying to put two and two together to figure out why is this going on. If you want to go out in the town, meet some girls, go to the local bar or whatever, obviously you want to go out with King Kong, because he always gets the girl. He's always got a beautiful girl in his left hand or right hand. And then Godzilla, if you want to go out and just break some stuff and destroy the town, obviously you want to go out with him. So that's sort of I think that's kind of the deal.
My character was very young and childlike in King of the Monsters, kind of a follower. And then this movie, she's definitely becoming a leader, and she's becoming a young woman. So it's definitely a coming of age story for her, learning how to become a woman and following her mother's footsteps, but in the right way. And you know, she shares a lot of her mother's traits, as if like you know, as in like direct and forwardness and stern and very, you know, serious when it comes to things, and pretty abrupt. But then she also has her dad's side where she's like pretty like oh, what do you call it, paranoid at times, and like, you know, because her dad's really quite, I feel like, quite paranoid and just like, you know, and scared of danger, and, and her mum's pretty like throws herself into danger. So she has both of those aspects, which I think really is nice because it has a cool effect to it. I love them. I mean, on set in the movie, they're an amazing team. They work really well together. They complement each other so well. You know, you have the knowledge, you have the realist, and then you have the full go-getter. I am the go-getter. I will throw myself into, you know, if they're scared to go in first, I'll go in. You know what I'm saying? Like, she is totally the go. She'll do anything, you know. And Bernie is the knowledge of the group. You know, he really holds a lot of information. He's a conspiracy theorist, so he is extremely smart, intelligent. And then you have the realist, which is Josh. I mean, he's very practical, logical, and you need one of those in your group, otherwise you're gonna die. So all of us put together, we complement each other so well. We're an amazing gang. And then offset, I mean, we are literally, it's so nice to be friends with, you know, the people you work with. And they're such kind people, and it's you find it easy to work with people that you love and, you know, you do anything for. Rebecca and I, who are coming together in the end, and that scene really gets me, just as a person, really emotional, because it shows that in the end we all unite no matter who we support. And I think that, to me, is the message I want to give out and just to the world. It's like, whoever you support, whatever you agree with, whatever you disagree with, eventually we all have to come together, because we all have skin, we all have a heart, we have to all understand we all are the same people. And as much as we all have different personalities and all that, we are all humans at the end of the day. I really enjoyed the practical sets because it really, I mean, I love practical anyway, because CGI, it's hard. You know, when you're looking at a tennis ball, you don't get the same effect as if you were looking at a big tall man covering his face and just going, you know, and then you're like, oh, that's definitely Godzilla. But yeah, no, I had a good time working on the practical sets, especially with like the big teeth and the skull. Yeah, and they were cute. It was a great place to play hide and seek. The relatable aspect, you know, when I watch Godzilla movies, like in the past, I couldn't relate to it because there wasn't any young people involved, you know, there wasn't any youth. So I think in these new ones, all audiences can relate, you know, parents and friends, and that best friend that's the best friend to the crazy person, or like, you know, that crazy person. So, you know, I feel like that there's so much expansion of youth and age, and it's great. It's very cultural, very different, you know, cultures, like Kaylee's character. So I feel like it's really cool because you get to have all sides of the spectrum all in one movie, and it's really exciting. He's extremely incredible, so knowledgeable of the script, every detail, every, you know, every camera move, he'll spot it out. It's amazing to watch, and definitely because I've always wanted to get into the directing aspect, and just to watch him direct, it's definitely an educational experience as well. Team Godzilla all the way. And then I'm gonna wink at camera. Goodbye, friends. I'm gonna go take a nap. But Team Godzilla, hit me up on Instagram and comment, Team Godzilla. Goodbye.
Josh is kind of Madison's tech wingman, if you know, like he kind of gets you the passwords for Monarch and kind of hacks into everything, and it's kind of Josh, Madison, and Bernie, and they basically on this adventure to try find out what Apex is really doing and why Godzilla is attacking and why he's kind of, you know, he's getting upset. So basically Josh is kind of on this journey not knowing what he's getting into and not fully understand. Like, you see that Josh doesn't fully understand what he's doing throughout the movie, but he's like, no, I'm just, the fate of the world's, in our hands, so we've got to do something. Whenever doing a film, I love to get to know the person that I'm working with. And it's great when you get to know them, because it's hard to, like, if you're doing a crying scene to cry around a stranger, like, you just don't do that. So I love to get to know the people. And Brian and Millie, they're amazing. They just bring such a light to set, and such just a laughter, and it's great. And Brian is the funniest person ever. Me and him, like, I see him as a big brother. Like, he's so fun to work with. And Millie, we just have a lot of banter, just a lot of making fun of each other. It's very fun. Adam, he's got a cool beard. No, he's amazing. He's really good at telling me what he wants, but he also lets me kind of work with the character Josh, because at the end of the day, the actor is taking on this, this persona. So I really love how he's able to let me bring my own kind of light to it and bring my own style of what I think Josh is.
There was a couple of things that really pulled me towards it. I found it really interesting that a lot of the King Kong films, there's this dynamic of he sort of falls in love with a beautiful lady and wants to save her, and that's the kind of thrust of the film. Often a blonde, beautiful lady, and there's a sort of I find that this one was really interesting, because the person that Kong has the most intimate relationship with is a child and a deaf girl. And I, when I found out that they had someone who was legally deaf, Kaylee, playing the part, I thought that was really interesting and valid. And I was like, yeah, right on, actually, for doing that. And then I realized that the character they wanted me to play was a sort of Jane Goodall-ish type of figure, but for King Kong, which I thought was pretty interesting. I thought this was a kind of iteration of this movie where the women there was something different, and I like that about it. Well, on screen, she's part of the Iwi indigenous people of Skull Island, whose parents were killed, and she was left alone on the island. And my character, who's an anthropological linguist, found her and understood the trauma that she'd gone through, and decided to adopt her and look after her, because there weren't really any other options. And so I'm effectively her mother, but it's a slightly funny setup, because obviously I have been raising this child on Skull Island for 10 years, or not 10 years actually, but 5 maybe. And 5 of the 10 that I've been there anyway. So it's a sort of unusual mother-daughter dynamic, but quite a fun one. We find them at odds because on the way to Hollow Earth, Godzilla is on the loose, and there's a sort of theory held by actually Eileen Andrews in her anthropological capacity that the Titans will find each other out, and that there is a long-held battle there's an ancient rivalry between these figures, and so if we put them in a vicinity, they'll probably find each other, and it'll probably go a bit pear-shaped. And she's right. The major thing to be excited about this movie is that, two of these classic monsters that have cropped up on our screens for years and years and years are going head to head. I mean, the film's about them. I'm not I think that's really so exciting, just to see that, and the spectacle of that, and everything that's going to happen around it. But what's clever about this one is that on top of that general excitement is there's a really good story, and there's some really fun, interesting characters. It's not, there's not your standard archetypal heroes and villains. It's all very unexpected and fun, and there's actually quite a lot of humor in it. Adam is great. I met him a while ago, actually, because he directed a very close friend of mine, Dan Stevens, in a film that he made, The Guest. And so I met him I went to visit Dan on that set, actually, because I was shooting something in the same area, and I met Adam then. It's such a great cast. It's a really, really great company of people. I mean, I think that these films are really clever at casting very good actors and actors who you don't expect to see cropping up in films like this in some respect. And there is just like a whole range of really brilliant people in this one, Alex included. And I've actually always wanted to work with him. I've always thought he's really a compelling actor and interesting, and so yeah, it's been great. And he's really tall, which is always a bonus for me because I'm really tall, and usually it can be lonely out there. Kaylee is, number one, a really good actor. She is as instinctive and brilliant as you could be given those circumstances. I mean, she really is very, very, very talented. So she's incredibly rewarding to work with as an actor. Like, she gives so much. And that, you know, like, she, as I've got to know her better, I've realized that she's extremely funny and playful, and she's just a great kid to be around. And so I feel proud to say we have become friends.